Joining us now to discuss, New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Good morning, Congresswoman. Great to see you.
Good morning. Great to see you, too.
So this bill passed with near unanimous support. What does the landmark release mean for government accountability? And how do you ensure that the files are released fully and fairly without any unnecessary redactions?
Yeah, well, of course, this is a sensitive issue, and there was some concern because I will just be perfectly honest, as a lawyer, the way that the discharge petition in the House was drafted was very poorly done. It didn't protect victims, particularly victims who are still involved in litigation and didn't want to have their names and their identities disclosed until their cases are completed. And that was a problem for many. Child sex documents are protected under law. We also had a lot of whistleblowers and a lot of key people that use sources and methods that were also being exposed were not protected under this Democrat discharge petition. Unfortunately, a lot of Republicans signed on to it. We brought it to the floor. We wanted full transparency, but we want to make sure we always protect the victims. That's a critical issue in any criminal justice operation. So what we did is we passed the file, we passed the bill, we got the Senate to actually pass it. And now President Trump will put it into law, and Attorney General Mamdani and that team will make sure that any of that sensitive information that's protected, most of it, actually all of it, is protected by various lawsuits and judicial orders, and we'll get as much as we possibly can out of it. But as you see, all this hyperventilating by the Democrats, guess who didn't release the files for the last 4 years? The Democrats and Joe Biden when they had control. So why? Now, guess why? We're finding out that many key Democrats are actually implicated in this, and that's what's going to be coming out in a slow, steady drip over the next several weeks.
Yeah, exactly. The timing of their insistence on releasing the files, just as the government was reopening, made us think a lot about their motivation. But in recent committee hearings on congressional stock trading, Congressman Brian Steele pressed expert witnesses on effective safeguards to prevent insider trading.
In your testimony, you stated that no member of Congress has ever been prosecuted under the Stock Act. Why do you think that's the case, that no prosecutions have come under the Stock Act?
Partly for the burden of proof you talked about. I mean, reasonable doubt is relatively high. The way the Stock Act structured is it's a self-policing.
Congresswoman, you sit on the House Intelligence Committee. What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is a hard case to prove because it's hard to show that actual information has been given to a member of Congress has been translated. And, I'm single, so I don't have a spouse that I can run things through like some of the Democrats do, like Nancy Pelosi, who got super wealthy. Her husband got super wealthy, but she was benefited from it. Look, we all disclose or actually we should be disclosing, as certainly I do. We disclose all the transactions that we have, everything we have, any money that we may have. And, it's a hard case to prove from a legal perspective, but we'll see where it goes. I mean, I think it looks like there are some examples of members who have engaged in insider trading, but how do you prove that? We don't, even on the Intelligence Committee, we really don't get information that deals with stock trades. We're talking about things that, we're talking about really serious stuff like, China, North Korea, our adversaries, what they're doing to try to, infiltrate the United States and manipulate our country and gain power over us. So those are the kinds of things that I see on my committee.
Congresswoman, I think that you're doing a great job. And my advice, I have a lot of experience on Wall Street, as do many others. Bring people who are under certain surveillance, compliance standards to comply with SEC and all the other regulators. Bring those same methods that they use to police the executives and everyone in their firm. Bring that same level of accountability and oversight, concurrent oversight, into Congress. So that way there's no one solely relying on self-reporting. They're getting statements, confirmations, duplicates, if you will, and doing other surveillance in terms of making sure there's no conflicts of interest. That's just my take on it. But moving on.
I agree with you, but remember something, John, a lot of this is very politically charged, and the Democrats use it as a weapon to drag people through the mud who spend all this time and money and they end up, you find almost nothing. I think the Republicans need to bring that accountability. They need to make sure that we're holding these people accountable. But you often have these, I hate, for lack of a better term, they're really just witch hunts to try to, smear somebody politically. I've had opponents run against me who have committed more egregious political candidate charges, and the FEC does nothing. Why? Because they're not a member, and it's not juicy and sexy, and nobody wants to go after them. But anybody who decides to be a political candidate should be careful. And that's, we have a compliance team that does this for me. I just hand everything over and they do it. I pay an accountant to do it because we want to make sure it's exactly right. And it's the way that it conforms. But, some members are sloppy and they don't do that. Some members are intentionally doing things. What are you going to see today? We have a member of Congress that is going to be considered for removal from committees today for stealing $5 million from FEMA. I mean, how does she get elected?
Unreal.
How did we not know about this? This was happening before she got elected, but
Exactly. We need
incredible.
to expose it all. And speaking about exposing it, New York City's mayor-elect is preparing for a much-anticipated sit-down with President Trump. This is what he wants to talk about. Take a listen.
I want to just speak plainly to the president about what it means to actually stand up for New Yorkers and the way in which New Yorkers are struggling to afford this city. And frankly, cost of living is something that I heard time and time again from New Yorkers about why they voted for Donald Trump. And this is something that is only continued in the last few months of this year, where we're hearing about childcare concerns, rent concerns, Con Ed concerns, even just getting on the bus, just $2.90. And just to make it clear to the president that this is what we're talking about, these are the stakes for New Yorkers and their ability to keep calling this city their home.
Congresswoman, what are your thoughts regarding his blah, blah, blah?
I hear the same thing you hear. This guy is the biggest liar, snake oil salesman, BSer. He talks in circles. The reason New York City is unaffordable is because of the Democrats. They have created these this is why millions of New Yorkers are thinking about leaving this state now. That's why we went from 45 congressional members in the 60s to 26, and we'll go to even less because people are leaving because of the Democrats' policies. I've never seen anything, but I hope President Trump puts him on that Oval Office stage and humiliates him and makes him understand that communism, Marxism, and anti-Semitism that he stands for, the anti-police, anti-law, rule of law rhetoric that he puts out, is the reason people are leaving New York City. It's the reason it's unaffordable. It's a disgrace. But I hope President Trump exposes him. Unfortunately, I think a lot of young people and a lot of people influenced by TikTok, which, by the way, the Chinese and a lot of our adversaries have a lot of control over manipulating the message on TikTok. People thought he was a great thing. They don't. We got to go through this cycle over and over. Young people don't realize that this guy is a phony, and what he's advocating for is the reason that we're in the jam we're in. It's the reason we have unaffordability. It's the reason we have high crime. It's all the policies of the very people that have put him in office.
Absolutely. The Democrats run the city as well as the state, but yet they're pointing the finger at Republicans. Unbelievable. And last but not least, Zohran Mamdani is in Albany right now in terms of a lawmaker. So he could have done something about this. Thank you so much for joining First Edition.
Exactly.
Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.